It's strange how quiet a courtroom can feel even when it's filled with people. The air was cold, sterile almost, like the truth itself was too heavy to breathe. I sat with my hands clenched on my lap, nails digging into the soft part of my palms just to keep myself grounded. Across from me, my soon-to-be ex-husband Brandon lounged back in his chair like he was watching a football game instead of sitting in divorce court. He was smirking. Always smirking. He even let out a laugh, a real loud careless laugh, when the judge mentioned something about property and shared assets. Like it was all a joke to him. Like I was a joke. That laugh wasn't new. I'd heard it too many times in our marriage, especially when I questioned him about strange transactions or missing time. He always had a way of making me feel small, like I was imagining things or just being dramatic. I remember thinking, right then, how this moment summed up our entire relationship. Me trying to be heard. Him laughing like I never mattered. It wasn't always this way. When we first met, he was charming, magnetic. He said all the right things, made all the right moves. He told me he admired my independence, my intelligence, my dreams. And I believed him. I really did. 4 years, I bent myself into smaller and smaller shapes to keep our marriage alive. I left my marketing job when he said my hours were too unpredictable. I gave up a promotion because he convinced me it would be too much pressure with a new house to manage. He told me he'd take care of us, that we'd build something better together. Then, after all the sacrifices, I found out he was building something, just not with me. Late night calls he'd brush off. Receipts from hotels I'd never been to. A secret bank account with withdrawals he swore were for business development. I wanted to scream, to fight, to make him admit what he was doing. But he would just tilt his head and laugh like I was overreacting. And slowly, I began to believe I was. Until I found the texts. I wasn't even snooping. His laptop was open, and the messages were right there. Dozens of them. Intimate. Cruel. Not just to one woman, but to 3. He called them escapes. He called me dull. My heart broke not because he cheated, but because I realized how disposable he thought I was. The betrayal lit a fire in me I hadn't felt in years. I wasn't just going to walk away quietly. I started documenting everything. I hired a lawyer, a smart one, who specialized in high-conflict divorces. I traced every dollar he tried to hide, every lie he put on paper. And most importantly, I made sure to protect the only thing that had been mine from the beginning, the small social media consulting firm I had started before we got married. Back when Brandon told me it was just a hobby. But that hobby had grown. It had clients. Revenue. An LLC. And because Brandon wanted to avoid tax complications due to past credit issues, I had filed everything under my name. He never cared enough to notice. That's why, in that courtroom, when the judge said my name, not his, in reference to the company, the room went still. He stopped laughing. His lawyer fumbled through papers, trying to contest it. But the judge had the documents in hand. The LLC was registered to me. The business bank account was in my name. The tax records were signed by me. The contracts with clients? All listed me as the sole provider. Brandon tried to speak, to interrupt, but the judge silenced him. You may have contributed, Mr. Rhodes, but your name is on none of the legal paperwork. Under state law, the company belongs solely to your wife. The silence that followed was louder than his laugh had ever been. For the first time, Brandon looked uncertain. Not angry. Not smug. Just lost. Like he had no idea how things slipped out of his hands. He had assumed, like always, that I would lose. That I would break down, cry, beg. That I was weak. But I wasn't. Not anymore. I didn't gloat. I didn't even look at him as I stood up, gathered my things, and walked out of that courtroom. My lawyer followed me, whispering congratulations, but I barely heard her. What I felt wasn't triumph. It wasn't even relief. It was something deeper. A quiet reclaiming of myself. A truth finally recognized not by him, but by the system that he thought would protect him. For years, I had been made to feel invisible. My thoughts dismissed. My voice silenced. But that day, when the judge said my name, clearly, firmly, it was like the world remembered I existed. And I mattered. I stepped outside into the warm afternoon light and took my first real breath in years. The fight wasn't over, healing never is. But I had won the first battle. Not because I wanted revenge, but because I finally chose myself. Sometimes justice doesn't come with applause. Sometimes it comes when a man who always laughed at you suddenly has nothing left to say.